Hi, everybody. Robin here at Toadstool Tarot, and welcome. And I'd like to have you all welcome my guest for today, Tom of the Early Ritual channel. And if you're not subscribed already, please do. And I put a link in the description below if you're uncertain about that, but it shouldn't be difficult to find with a little search. I want to welcome, let's see, Heather's here, Indigo Jaguar, The More Intuitive Me, Kristen Louise, Miss Moonlight, M.A. the Gray, let's see, Roots and Waves, Ange, hey Ange. I think that's it. So we're gonna venture into something today that I almost want to say is a taboo topic. It's because a lot of people don't talk about it or don't like to talk about it or are dismissive about it. And we're focusing today on the major arcana. And I hate to use the phrase majors only decks because that sounds a little bit dismissive and diminutive. And when you think about it, and go back into tarot history, and particularly in Europe and France, a lot of people over there use just the trump cards. I don't like to use the word trump either, but
definitely not.
But the 22 majors they read with. And I also know a lot of people that do regular tarot that started off with decks like the 1JJ Swiss and didn't know how to read the pips, so they started off reading with just the majors. And if you go back far enough in history, I'm not really sure which came first, the minors, which are playing cards, or the majors, which are the trumps, or if they came out at the same time. But I would say in contemporary history, probably what we think of tarot as all 78 cards, at least in America, and playing cards are the minors. So it's almost like there was a split somewhere along the way, and the minors got shuffled off to gaming decks. So the majors seem to be, I don't know how they were used in games when tarot started, but
yeah, I don't know enough about the history in that regard either. I mean, I think the playing cards or the suits were first, though. I want to say that. I'm not sure if that's true, though.
I think so too, because I think the earliest ones I've heard about were the Mamluk cards from is it Turkey or Persia or something?
Yeah.
And I think those were just the 4 suits and perhaps some court cards. And then I'm not sure at what point these other sort of, we'll maybe call them lesson cards, came in.
Yeah.
Majors. And they are, to my mind, the archetypes of living, the actions in society and
definitely
daily life, the way, the lessons we learn, the guidance systems we follow, the rules we go by. I'm going to quote Tom because I mean, not Tom, Gerald. I'm going to quote Gerald of Tarot Stash. Now, he reminded me of his quote that he's used not too long ago. He doesn't like to use majors only decks. He goes, you need the right tool for the job. You don't want to use a sledgehammer to put in a thumbtack. Now, that feels a bit extreme to me. And I think a lot of people look at them, they are the majors and the minor. Major mysteries, minor mysteries. Yeah. So the majors have been sort of relegated to having more importance. But I feel like, yes, they have more importance, but there are subtleties in there too.
Agreed. Yeah. No, I think the difference here, and I appreciate what Gerald is saying. I mean, to some extent, that's true. And I think if you are somebody who's not modulating your understanding or the way that you're interpreting the cards when you're reading majors only or something like that, then I think yes, it could come across as quite heavy-handed of a reading at times. But I mean, all this, like you said, it's the fool's journey is like it all encompassing of the human experience. Everything's there that you need it to be in those 22 cards. Like so, what I do like, I mean, obviously, I do prefer reading full decks. I've kind of fallen into like having a number of majors only decks. Like we can talk about that. Like it wasn't something I set out to do by any stretch of the means, but I do like to read with them occasionally, and at least as part of other readings, as part of a layer. But I feel like with the full 78, you do get a lot of new nuance, and you can really get kind of granular. Where sometimes I think maybe with the majors only, it will be a bit of a high level approach at times.
I think though you can adjust to incorporate subtleties into the majors. Now, I used to play this game, and I've recommended to others. Lay out all your majors in a row on a table, and take the minors and look at each minor and see which major might that encompass.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the meaning of that minor and see. Sometimes it's more than one card, but sometimes you'll see, oh, that could be described by that particular major, and that could be in that a major card could have a number of minors within it. So, and also a lot of readings, even if you're just doing major readings, of course, it has a lot to do with the context of the question and the spread that you're using, and the combination of the cards and the orientation of one against another in a spread and where they fall and so forth. So there's and also upright and reversed if you do that too. Yeah. So there are a lot of elements in there that there are subtleties in there that I think a lot of people just kind of go on the surface. They'll flash on the title and think, oh, well, that means this key word, and the minors and the majors, it's like they'll come with a key word, but there's a lot more going on in the cards than meets the eye. And I think if you work with them and live with them for a while, you'll discover more and more. I was going to play a little game with you. Oh, well, we were talking a little bit about how we started or how we discovered majors decks. For me, I have been using tarot for a couple of years, and then I thought, I think I'd like to explore creating my own tarot deck. But I procrastinated for about a year and a half because I thought, oh my God, 78 images. That's a little overwhelming. I can't even begin, because I know if I can't follow through, I will stop and abandon the project. So I was looking and shopping around, window shopping a little bit on Make Playing Cards, and I thought, gee, all these other people are putting out major Arcana decks. I wonder what that's all about and how does that work. And I bought a couple to see if I could work with them, and I could. And I thought, well, gee, 22 is manageable as opposed to 78 if I'm starting a project. So, I woke up one Sunday morning and got out my drawing pad and some markers and scribbled out 22 illustrations with the help of some on-screen, I Googled, the Fool, and it showed me the Fool card from, 20, 30 different decks on my computer screen. and I used them all as a model and sort of drew from it what they all seem to have in common, and managed to scribble out my own deck in about 4 hours. So that was the beginning, something that would make it sort of bite-sized and more manageable for me to accomplish. But after I did it, I realized, wow, there's more value here than I thought there was. I'm not really limiting myself with 22 cards.
Yeah.
I found I could do full readings with the 22 just as well as I could 78. I guess
Yeah.
it's a little easier, but
I think I think it's definitely easier for somebody, especially if they're starting out, to focus on that. I think I've never created a deck, so I mean, maybe I'm looking at it wrong in that sense. But in my mind, I feel like if I was going to create a deck, I would focus on the majors first.